Hello everyone, I'm Brazen Eagle, and thank you for joining me here. So, I was going to do this video yesterday, but of course I ran out of time. Regardless, for today, I have no real article to discuss or really to respond to like I normally do, but just some of my observations and thoughts on the terms democracy and democratic socialism. It is, in my opinion, as a form of government, those terms are almost synonymous. Now, democracy inevitably becomes bloated and rife with corruption, theft, and general chaos and anarchy. But, as I have presented myself, you can assure that I will always be one against democracy as a form of government, but the question is why? Well, that's really why I want to do this video. But like I've said before, I just want to let you know that I live in a university town. This university that I live in is a big university. It's huge. And I see all sorts of flyers and message boards to get people involved in clubs, organizations, and other types of events. Now, I'm sure right now that you're wondering if I live in Nevada because I chose to display the University of Nevada at Reno for this topic at the moment. I'm going to be honest here. I do not and have never been to Nevada before. I just chose this university just because it has a nice blue screen. Now, regardless, at the university town that I live in, there are two flyers that have, or at least two political flyers that have inspired this video. So, the first is a flyer from the American Monarchist Society flyer that I found hanging on several of the boards around campus. Honestly, I find this to be kind of humorous, trying to institute a monarchy in the United States of America, and this really isn't much of an issue. I mean, it's just, to me, it's kind of funny, it's kind of humorous, it's kind of like, oh, what if, But the other flyer that I saw is dangerous, we'll say. Potentially dangerous. It's a flyer for the Young Democratic Socialists of America call-out event. I saw this all over campus. Democratic Socialists, though, in my opinion, from what I've seen and experienced, are generally somewhat honest about their goals and ideals. Democratic Socialists just want to take what you have and redistribute it to other people against your will. I mean, that's basically democratic socialism in a nutshell. They do it democratically, but they do it through force. They're just, from our perspective, communists, of course, when, communism never works. Now, before I talk about the ills of democracy, I want to explore what democratic socialism supposedly is. So this is, of course, from the DSA-USA.org page, just Democratic Socialists of America. So what is democratic socialism supposed to be about? They believe that both the economy and society should be run democratically to meet public needs, not to make the profits for a few. So that sounds nice. It doesn't mean it is nice. It just sounds nice. I'm not a huge corporate guy. I've never worked for a corporation. I don't see corporations as necessarily evil, but I don't see them as good either. So my goal is to really help the common man in America, much like myself. To achieve a more just society, many structures of our government and economy must be radically transformed through greater economic and social democracy so that ordinary Americans can participate in many decisions that affect our lives. Democracy and socialism go hand in hand. All over the world, wherever the idea of democracy has taken root, the vision of socialism has taken root as well, everywhere but in the United States. Because of this, many false ideas about socialism have developed in the U.S., supposedly. So, that's a very small, quick synopsis of what democratic socialism is. Now, really here, I want to look at how they use the term democracy in an absolutely honest way. Democratic socialists, of course, love democracy. It's in their name. To them, democracy is the best form of government because they believe in equality. And unfortunately, it's really unfortunate that equality will never be achieved in the history of humanity. It just does not work with human nature. I don't need to compare the different human races against each other and different competing factors to see this. Just compare the differences between biological males and biological females of any single race. You put white men versus white females, you put black men versus black females, Asian men versus Asian females, go on and on and on. Men in general are just better at pretty much everything compared to females. It's unfortunate, but true. Men, of course, generally are physically stronger, intellectually worse, but also better, much more emotionally resilient, and are capable of building a prosperous civilization. Patriarchy can build great things. Matriarchy has yet to build a great, successful civilization. And of course, females don't have all those positive characteristics, because it is the hormone called testosterone that makes men men, and estrogen makes females female. Testosterone gives men advantages that females will never have. Some would say that testosterone is the hormone of the gods. Now, I've just established that inequality will persist no matter what people do, no matter what they think, no matter how they feel. Equality just can't ever exist. It's okay to admit that we are all unequal, but I want to remind everyone that we are also not equally unequal. Some people are just better than others at things, and that's okay. Democracy, though, supposedly works only when everyone is equal. And as I have stated, we will never be equal. Therefore, democracy will never really work. And that begs to ask the question about government. In a democracy, why should people who have little to no responsibility for the country or government be given a say? Why should they be given authority if they have little to no responsibility? Why should they have authority? It doesn't make sense. If you have no responsibility for the group of the people or the government, then you shouldn't be in charge of it. Now, the reason some people push for democracy is to water down the electorate. Throughout the history of the United States and, of course, other Western nations, the electorate has only grown larger and larger to the point where we currently are almost a democracy. We are on the thin line of becoming a full-blown, chaotic democracy. The last thing that's holding us from becoming that is the Electoral College. It is, in my opinion, though, that we will probably see the Electoral College be voted away in my lifetime, and that's frankly the end of any republic and any sort of prosperous America. Now, we got to go back to human nature first. Because it is in human nature to want to feel good, I mean, that's just what we all want. We want to feel pleasure, we want to feel good, we just want to feel positive. It is easy to promise voters who have little to nothing and promise them other people's money, or other people's wealth, I should say. And that's the problem of democracy. It doesn't take in human nature. A democracy is 51% of the people telling everyone else that they better listen or there will be consequences for the other 49%. Democracy is just the use of the government to commit theft from those who work and create wealth and redistribute that wealth to the groups or the individuals who vote themselves other people's money or wealth or prosperity. Of course, democracy is corrupt, and will always fail. So, we've spent more than enough time on this democratic socialist page. Too much red for me. But I actually have here an old internet page from 2005. Apparently, this is from LouRockwell.com. And from what I can gather, saying he is an anti-state, anti-war, and pro-market individual, or web page, I assume that he is a libertarian of sorts, if not a full-blown anarcho-capitalist. But before I move on, I want to let you know that myself, I am not an ANCAP. In my opinion, anarcho-capitalism just really can't ever work. As much as I would like it to, it just won't work, much like anarcho-communism, because it leaves out the sins of human nature in order to have a successful civilization. There are things about anarcho-capitalism that I like, but if it's full-blown anarcho-capitalism, I just don't think it'll work. And that's just my opinion, though. But regardless, I bring up this site because it contains wisdom from the founding fathers of the United States of America. So, I'm not going to read all this, but I'm going to read quite a bit of it. So, from Ancient Wisdom and Ancient Humility, modern champions of democracy, who fancy themselves courageous defenders of the American political ideal, have either totally forgotten or never learned what America's founding fathers knew 2 centuries ago. Democracy is the worst form of government ever tried. Don't believe me? Consider the following quotes from Benjamin Franklin. Democracy is 2 wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. Liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. From Alexander Hamilton, we are a republican government. Real liberty is never found in despotism or in the extremes of democracy. It has been observed that a pure democracy, if it were practical, would be the most perfect government. Experience has proved that no position is more false than this. The ancient democracies in which the people themselves deliberated never possessed one good feature of government. Their very character was tyranny, their figure deformity. From John Adams, democracy never lasts long, it soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy, yet they did not commit suicide. And from Thomas Jefferson, like I said earlier, a democracy is nothing more than mob rule, where 51% of the people may take away the rights of the other 49. James Madison, democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. And from John Quincy Adams, the experience of all former ages had shown that of all human governments, democracy was the most unstable, fluctuating, and short-lived. And finally, from John Marshall, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, early on in our country's history, between a balanced republic and a democracy, the difference is like that between order and chaos. Surprise, you shouldn't be, not if you know your political history. America's founding fathers were visionary political philosophers confronted with the most daunting task imaginable. Their task was not merely to found a new nation, but to invent a new system of government. They diligently researched history to learn what to do. History rewarded them. It taught them not only what to do, but even more importantly, what not to do. The most important thing they learned not to do was to adopt democracy, the worst form of government ever tried. Given the Founding Fathers' fully warranted fear and loathing of democracy, we should not be surprised that the Constitution of the U.S. does not contain a single solitary reference to the word democracy, but instead stipulates that the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. The distinction between a democracy and a republic is hardly trivial. That the distinction between a democracy and a republic could inspire the Founding Fathers to such passions speaks volumes. The Founding Fathers considered the distinction between a democracy and a republic to be the distinction between freedom and slavery, between civilization and barbarianism, between prosperity and poverty. Or barbarism, but whatever. So, and then this article, or this page, follows up with the following excerpts are from a 156-page citizenship manual issued by the U.S. War Department on November 30th, 1928, explaining the difference between a democracy and a republic. surprisingly, or not really surprisingly at all, FDR ordered all copies of this manual withdrawn from the government printing office and all U.S. Army posts and destroyed it without explanation. So, for citizenship, a democracy, a government of the masses, authority derived through mass meeting or any form of direct expression results in mobocracy. Attitude towards property is communistic, negating property rights. Attitude towards the law is that the will of the majority shall regulate whether it be based upon deliberation or governed by passion, prejudice, and impulse without restraint or regard to consequences. Results in demagogism, license, agitation, discontent, and anarchy. And I'm not going to read this, maybe I will read this entire thing for citizenship republic. Authority is derived through the election by the people of public officials best fitted to represent them. Attitude towards law is the administration of justice in accord with fixed principles and established evidence, with a strict regard to consequences. A greater number of citizens and extent of territory may be brought within its compass. Avoids the dangerous extreme of either tyranny or mobocracy. Results in statesmanship, liberty, reason, justice, contentment, and progress. Is a standard form of government throughout the world. A republic is a form of government under a constitution which provides the election for an executive, a legislative body, who, working together in a representative capacity, have all the power of appointment, all the power of legislation, all power to raise revenue and appropriate expenditures, and are required to create a judiciary to pass upon the justice and legality of the government acts and to recognize certain inherent individual rights. Now, I can keep going on about this, but I'm not going to do that. But now this is a lot of information to take in. And actually, I decided to go ahead and look around for this, for the manual, and I found it from this one page. From this page, this was a training manual on citizenship, U.S. history, and the Constitution, and was compiled and issued by the War Department on the same date, November 30th, 1928, to teach our young men in the services the fundamental principles upon which our government was founded, which this training manual I think is great. I've never heard of this. The precise and scholarly definitions presented throughout the manual were carefully considered as a proper guide for U.S. soldiers and U.S. citizens by the Chief of Staff of the United States Army. Such definitions take precedence over any definitions that may be found in the present commercial dictionaries, which have suffered periodic modification to please the powers in office. Now, this next paragraph, or paragraph form block of words, isn't quite right, in my opinion, but we'll go with it. Shortly after the bank holiday in 1933, orders from FDR suddenly demanded without explanation that all copies of this book be withdrawn from the government printing office and the army posts to be suppressed and destroyed. So began the demagogic descent of the U.S. and the subversion of the Constitution into Americanized National Socialism, bankruptcy, and this continued state of national emergency that we have experienced as a nation for the past 1800-ish years. So obviously that last sentence there doesn't really make sense, since I'm assuming that whoever wrote this talks about socialism and being a nationalist at the same time, not being a Nazi, but being a socialist first and then a nationalist for your country, and that we haven't been around for 1800 years. But regardless, if you would like to check out this page, this actual training manual, I would highly recommend it. It's very, very interesting. And if we want to take a look at the words democracy to double check on our words, democracy. So obviously we hit 20 searches, and I really want to point out where it says in this manual the ills of democracy. It's not, the United States government is not a democracy but a republic. And it also tries to explain a little bit about autocracy, which is for another video, but democracy, from this training manual from a little less than 100 years ago, a government of the masses, authority derived through mass meeting or any other form of direct expression, results in mobocracy. Attitudes, or the attitude towards property, is communistic, negating property rights. Attitude towards law is that the will of the majority shall regulate whether it be based upon deliberation or governed by passion, prejudice, and impulse without restraint or regard to consequences. Results in demagogism, license, agitation, discontent, and anarchy. Basically the same thing I said earlier, but it's very interesting to see that in 1928, we still understood what democracy and the failure of democracy will lead to. But, you know, it's unfortunate that we live in such unenlightened times right now regarding the terms democracy and how so many people use the term democracy to promote the death of our nation. Anyways, now right now, I'm sure whoever is left viewing this video is assuming that even though I really don't like democracy, you would probably assume that I'm an individual who desires a constitutional republic for our country when we are done. Now, notice that I want to emphasize the when we are done part in my last sentence. When we are done. At my end goal is a constitutional republic. But when we are done, now, stay with me here for right now. When we are done, in that sentence, is the most important part of my idea for the future. The work that must be done if we win a hypothetical or potential civil war will determine if this country can have a rebirth of its founding. Look, we're headed towards a civil war, in my opinion. I could be wrong. I could be definitely wrong, but that is my opinion. But if we do end up in a civil war, and let's say we win, whoever we is, there is a ton of work that must get done before we can actually re-become a constitutional republic. And I'm talking a lot of work, like 1-2 decades worth of transitional government. But that is a video for another time. And this video is, of course, about the ills and the fight. At least my fight, maybe your fight, maybe not your fight, but the fight against democracy and ultimately communism. But with that in mind, I hope you learned why I will always be against democracy and the logical justification for why democracy will never work. So, thank you very much for watching if you made it this far into the video, and I hope you have a great, great day.